Weekday mornings, I walk my wife Morena to work. Her office is in Poblenou, in a small building next to one of the new apartment towers. It looks like an up-and-coming area with some big construction project happening every few blocks. Glassy new facades stand side by side with narrow 100-year-old flats. After a couple months walking down there every morning, I decided to look into it. What's going on in Poblenou? Well, like most Barcelona neighborhoods, Poblenou has a long history. A former hub of Catalan industry that had fallen into disrepair, it's now becoming a fashionable place for people to live, work, and go out. So if you're looking for a less-known neighborhood to visit on your trip to Barcelona, the Poblenou area could be fun to spend an afternoon in. And if you're thinking about moving here, it's worth a look as well. I'm hardly the first person to write about it. Searching around, in fact, I find that many headlines about Poblenou call it Barcelona's coolest neighborhood. Is it? I don't know. I always thought Born was pretty cool myself, and Gótico's not bad, if you can get over the fact that it's mostly fake. There's a lot we could say about Eixample as well, but humble Poblenou, the old industrial area? Well, let's see. It's got a lot of restaurants, modern cafes, offices, and housing both new and old. Maybe there's something to this. Hey everybody, it's Daniel. Welcome back to Spain to Go, the best podcast in the entire multiverse for all things Spain. This is episode 85, all about Poblenou, the old industrial area here in Barcelona that's developing very quickly. First off, shout out to Alex. Alex enjoyed my Japan episode, which I believe is the last episode 84, and he made a donation. You can also make a donation if you would like over at expatmadrid.com/donate. I appreciate any amount you could send my way. That's expatmadrid.com/donate. So thank you very much, Alex. Also, a shout out to Alexandra in Prague. Alexandra says, I started learning Spanish half a year ago and found you on the internet, and your podcast and blog are a double combo for those who learn English and Spanish. My mood becomes better when I listen to your podcast. That is approximately what she said. She sent me a few messages over on Instagram, so thank you, Alexandra, for that. I appreciate your listening and your encouragement. It's easy to just post things on the internet and get feedback and likes without actually hearing from anyone directly. I always appreciate when people send me a message on Instagram or via email or, of course, on expatmadrid.com/donate. You can also send me a message. Anyway, very good to hear from people who are listening to the podcast. Also, hearing from you helps me to decide what kind of content to put out next, because I'm able to help real people with their real concerns rather than just, guessing at what people want to hear. So hit me up on any channel. Thank you. Back to the topic of Poblenou. Where is Poblenou exactly? Well, most people, what they consider to be Poblenou is part of the Sant Martí district of Barcelona, where I also live. But in reality, Sant Martí is huge. I do not live in the Poblenou part of it. Barcelona has officially 10 districts, and Sant Martí is one of the 10 districts. But in addition to the 10 districts, it looks like City Hall has started dividing Barcelona into 73 neighborhoods, of which 5 have the word Poblenou in the name. I kind of confuse districts with neighborhoods all the time. I don't know. You can Google districts of Barcelona to get the full map, but the neighborhoods are subdivisions of those districts. 5 different neighborhoods have the word Poblenou in the name. So there's El Poblenou, which is the original core of the neighborhood. There's Diagonal Mar i el Front Marítim del Poblenou, along the beach. There's Provençals del Poblenou. There's El Parc i la Llacuna del Poblenou. And there's Vila Olímpica del Poblenou, which was built for the '92 Olympics. Some of those names don't exactly roll off the tongue, and I've never heard anyone say them. Diagonal Mar, for example, is a large shopping mall where Diagonal hits the beach, more or less. I'd just call that neighborhood the area around Diagonal Mar if I were talking to a friend. There's no reason to call it Diagonal Mar il front maritime del Poblenou. That is unnecessarily long. Also, as I mentioned in my article about Clot and Sant Martí, a lot of things in Barcelona have both Catalan and Spanish names, but the neighborhoods and districts tend to be called by their Catalan names. All the street signs are also in Catalan. So Poblenou is Pueblo Nuevo, but nobody I know is actually calling it Pueblo Nuevo. With that, I should probably add the further caveat that I speak Spanish, I don't speak Catalan, so I could be pronouncing a lot of Catalan place names badly here. I don't think it's too bad because I've heard people saying them and more or less I think I know how to pronounce them. But if you're here for English or Spanish, that's great. If you're here for Catalan, I'm sorry. I'm not going to be speaking Catalan at a high level anytime soon. So personally, I would use Poblenou to refer to anything in a triangle between Carrer de la Marina, Avinguda Diagonal, and the beach. That's still a big area, but it's not quite as big as the whole of Sant Martí. City Hall adds the area between Diagonal and Gran Via as well, but there's not really much going on there. Officially, though, that is the neighborhood Provençals de Poblenou. If you're not living in Barcelona, none of this means anything to you probably. You can check a map or just trust me. The main historical bit about Poblenou that you should know is that it was built outside the old city wall, so it's kind of on the outskirts of what was originally Barcelona. Now it's part of the city, of course, but it's along the beach, sort of up the coast from what we would consider downtown Barcelona. So, what's special about the Poblenou neighborhood? I'm not exactly convinced that Poblenou is Barcelona's coolest neighborhood, like some articles have suggested, but it is cool and getting cooler by the day. I know a businessman, in fact, who invested in Poblenou real estate because he's convinced it's like getting into Brooklyn in the year 2000. Obviously, Barcelona is not New York, but real estate down there seems to be booming either way. You can rent a penthouse in one of the apartment towers for 5,000 euros a month, or buy a flat with a sea view for $1 million or $2 million. Or you can find something a lot cheaper. Like I said, it's a big area. Some buildings down there in the Front Maritime are really sleek and new. When Morena and I were looking for a flat to buy, we briefly looked at the area around Paseo del Taulat, a couple of blocks from the beach. It was, as the saying goes, way out of our price range, but if you've got that kind of money, you could certainly do worse. In fact, the area around Diagonal Mar is developing very rapidly, with several new high-rise buildings full of expensive flats. The only problem I can think of is that the area is very close to La Mina, which is not the best part of Barcelona, but I don't know how that would affect your day-to-day life if you lived there. Maybe it wouldn't at all. If you've visited Barcelona, you've probably been to the beach at Barceloneta. But keep walking past the casino with its golden fish sculpture designed by famous architect Frank Gehry, and the newly remodeled Port Olympic, and you'll find further beaches at Bogatel and Marbella, which are less crowded, less touristy, and right on the edge of Poblenou. This stretch of beach isn't full of restaurants and bars like Barceloneta, but there's a sports center, a skate park, a calisthenics area, and a bit of trees and grass. That's Parc de Poblenou, right along the coast, to be exact. On the other side of the park, you can find Rambla de Poblenou, a smaller boulevard that's a much less crowded version of the famous Rambla across town. The more famous Rambla, the one that goes from Colón to Plaza Catalunya, is okay if you're a tourist, but if you're a Barcelona local, you'd probably rather punch yourself in the dick than spend more than 30 seconds there. I know I would. Rambla de Poblenou has the pedestrian vibe, but without all the tourists, the crowds, or the pickpockets. Stop and have a drink or something to eat on one of the terrazas, or just take a stroll. It's very nice. Of course, the Poblenou neighborhood is no longer new. Built out during the 19th century, it was one of Spain's largest industrial areas for a time and was known as the Catalan Manchester, due to the proliferation of textile mills. Walking around the neighborhood today, you may spot the old smokestacks standing in odd places, the remains of factories active during the Industrial Revolution. Poblenou may have had over 200 smokestacks at one point. These days, there are only 28, plus the Torre de las Aguas del Besós, part of a failed project from the 1880s meant to help out with Barcelona's water supply. Today, the Torre holds the Poblenou Historical Archive, and you can also climb to the top with a pre-booked ticket. It looks like the visits are once a week, every Saturday at 12. There's a link to all of this stuff on my blog, by the way. Just go to expatmadrid.com/Poblenou, and you will find it. There's a link to the website where you can book tickets to climb this old water tower. There's links to all kinds of other interesting things. Another notable historic monument in the Poblenou area is the cemetery. Built in 1775 and rebuilt in the early 1800s after its destruction by Napoleon's troops during the Iberian incursion, it's full of people who, while not world famous, are at least famous in Catalonia, allegedly. You can go ahead and quiz your average Barcelona resident about the life and works of such characters as Valentí Almiral or José Anselmo Clavé. I suspect they may not know all that much, but the graves of both Clavé and Almiral are at the Poblenou Cemetery, in case you are interested. La Vanguardia has an article about the history of consumer co-ops in the area, link on my blog. The co-ops were not only the precursors to today's supermarkets, but they were also sort of cultural centers for working class people. That article also mentions the grittier side of the once proletarian area, the epidemics, the exploitation, and the child labor. Like many places in Barcelona, Poblenou changed a lot in the years leading up to the '92 Olympics. The Villa Olímpica was built to house the athletes during the Games. Now it's just another neighborhood, and the whole area began to remodel and rebuild after decades of neglect. Today things are quite a bit different than they were. How different? Well, they're definitely more high-tech. One of my more popular podcast episodes, the last several months, answers the question, is Barcelona the new Austin? It's tempting to compare places to other places. I've already mentioned that Poblenou used to be the Catalan Manchester, and I've also mentioned that I know somebody who compared it to Brooklyn. So, is Barcelona as a whole the new Austin? Well, I heard that from a guy on Tim Ferriss's podcast. He's one of the big Silicon Valley tech bros, and I actually gave the question a bit of thought. While the exact meaning of New Austin isn't clear to me, I'm pretty sure it has something to do with attracting tech-savvy people and startups due to a low cost of living and a variety of lifestyle factors, which Barcelona, of course, does. It's much cheaper to live out here than it would be in the US, and the lifestyle is very good. And while there's nothing stopping a startup from forming elsewhere, it would seem that Poblenou is the center of Barcelona's startup scene. In fact, the 22@ area, I don't know how to say this, 22@. It's written with the number 22 and then the @ sign like you have in the middle of your email address. I think they didn't think this through very well because there's not a very good way of pronouncing this in English. Anyway, this area, 22 @ sign, was specifically designed to create a sort of tech hub near Glorias, which is right at the top edge of Poblenou. Plaça de Glorias was supposed to be the new city center in Ildefons Cerdà's 1860 master plan for Barcelona's future, and it may still get there. As of this writing, it's all under construction. Either way, due to the specific mix of buildings, semi-abandoned industrial, office buildings, and housing, there's not a lot going on in some parts of Poblenou on weekends. It's a bit more active during office hours, and there are some areas that are built up and have a pedestrian life, but parts of it are pretty close to abandoned, especially outside office hours. While we're here, let's get all Lonely Planet and talk about where to eat and drink in Poblenou. The aforementioned Rambla de Poblenou has a lot of food options. There's the usual crowd of Italian restaurants. Italians are the #1 immigrant group in Barcelona, after all. Also, check out the several Lebanese and Syrian restaurants along both sides of the street. The world's second best vegan restaurant is on Rambla de Poblenou as well. It's called Blubar, Blubar, and it's at number 11, down by the beach. Second best vegan restaurant in the world, according to a list made by Time Out magazine. I don't know, I'm not particularly into vegan food. If you're looking for meatier options, check out the mixed grills at Tavernicola on Calle Roc Boronat, number 70, or Tierra del Fuego on Calle Benero, 16 to 18. Both Argentinian restaurants offering plenty of protein. Poblenou is also home to 1.5 billion coffee places. Not literally, figuratively. I still haven't figured out what specialty coffee is, but you can get it at The Miners at Rambla de Poblenou 107. I also like Abyss Coffee at Diagonal 93. They've got a big bright space you can hang out in with windows on both sides of the building. Or head to Caffeine at Calle Bilbao, number 98. It's a small place with friendly people, good coffee, and a couple of lunch options as well. If you're looking for craft beer or fine wines or cocktails, I'm sure you'll find them as well. As I have mentioned before, my days of gonzo journalism in the mini bars of Barcelona are over. Morena recommends one called Trash Talk at Calle Peracuarto, 244. Peracuarto, this is one I'm not sure how to pronounce in Catalan. It is P-E-R-E, and then the Roman numeral 4. I think this refers to an old king of the Reino de Aragon. This is the precursor to Catalonia. Don't tell the Catalans. If you look for Pedro IV or Peter IV on Wikipedia, there's 3 people. There's Peter IV of Aragon, Peter IV of Congo, and also Peter I of Brazil, also known as Peter IV of Portugal, 1798 to 1834. Either way, Peracuarto is one of the longest streets in Poblenou. It goes from one end to the other, passing through a park in the middle. It's a nice street to walk along if you want to get an idea of what's happening in the area. Let's talk briefly about the specter of gentrification. I have some opinions about gentrification. I actually have a lot of opinions about gentrification. If you're thinking of moving to a neighborhood like Poblenou, certainly someone will mention gentrification as an issue. The word gentrification, or gentrificación, has even become popular in Spanish in the last several years. It's something people worry about with rent prices going up in many areas and a chronic shortage of cheaper options for young people. But the fact is that neighborhoods change with time, and some neighborhoods probably need a bit of gentrification. Poblenou is one of them. There's lots of space, plenty of old buildings just sitting there unused and abandoned. Why not develop it into something more livable? It has long been my assertion that any neighborhood is, at any time, either getting better or getting worse. People are moving in or moving out. And due to the realities of supply and demand, you can't really have an influx of people into a neighborhood without some price increase, or a lot of construction to keep ahead of demand. It's also worth mentioning that a lot of Poblenou is very old buildings that would be so expensive to renovate that it's almost not worth it. You can see some places where an old flour mill has been turned into housing. And that's great. However, you can see some of the photos of this area on my blog. A lot of buildings don't exactly look salvageable, or at least not salvageable with a reasonable amount of investment. So we may see a lot of new construction to meet the demand. Meanwhile, old businesses close and new businesses open. That's just part of life. The new businesses will be different than the old ones. Things change, in some cases, for the better. Anyway, I don't see how we can have a society with social mobility and also get angry every time someone moves to a new neighborhood. Some people stay in the same street their whole lives, others don't. That's just the way it is. When Morena and I moved to Barcelona several years ago, we started living in the cheapest place that we could find. A couple years later, we moved up to a better neighborhood. A few years after that, when we started looking for houses to buy, we realized we would never be able to find anything within our price range in the area we were currently renting. Not even close. So we moved up here to Clot, where prices are lower. That's just how it works. People move and neighborhoods change. I can't think of any solution to gentrification that doesn't sound like some sort of totalitarian nightmare. And I'm not sure what a couple of upwardly mobile immigrants like us are supposed to do, according to the anti-gentrification crowd. Maybe live in shanties outside town? I really don't know. In any case, I've been in Spain for almost 20 years now. Yikes. And in that time, I've seen a couple of boom and bust cycles in the real estate market. Back during the Great Recession, prices collapsed, and a lot of neighborhood businesses were replaced by pawn shops and low-cost bars. Gentrification seemed to come to a halt for several years, as unemployment hit 24% and thousands of young people left to work abroad. And guess what? Nobody liked that either. So be careful what you wish for. Maybe gentrification is just another word for progress. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. I hope you have a great day wherever you are in the world. Remember, you can go to expatmadrid.com/donate to donate some money to the cause here. I will spend it on coffee and sparkling water in humble, non-gentrifying cafes of my working class neighborhood. You can also check out my YouTube channel, Learn Spanish with Daniel. Head over there, just put Learn Spanish with Daniel into YouTube, and you should be able to find me. Within the last couple of weeks, I've made like 3 new videos for people learning Spanish. I will make more. I'm doing a lot of work for my actual job that pays me these days, but once I get back to Learn Spanish with Daniel, you will see more activity from me. I enjoy teaching Spanish because it's a language that's given me a lot throughout the years. A lot of opportunities in my life have opened up because of the Spanish language, so I like sharing it with others. You can find me on all the social media, Daniel Welsh, that's WELSCH. You can send me a message on the blog, expatmadrid.com/contact. I have a contact form. And that's it. My laptop is running out of battery here, and also my voice is giving out. So I'm going to quit before I'm reduced to making some embarrassing croaking noise here. Thank you very much for listening. Thanks to Alex and Alexandra for their support, and talk to you soon. Hasta la próxima. Bye.